Hello, everybody. This is our fourth year of Building Electrification webinars, and we have a great presenter tonight, Sue Dorward, who's just starting at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come to this webinar to hear about little me and what I've done. And I hope you get something useful and inspiring out of it, and it helps you move forward on your electrification journey. A little bit about me. I know Steve just mentioned I was the Sustainability and Energy Coordinator at Raritan Valley Community College for about 14 years, leaving just last year. Um, while I was there, I took some classes there, and then I also started taking classes at Columbia and recently got my master's in carbon management from their engineering school. And then last year started my own LLC. So now I'm an independent consultant doing carbon management and a variety of projects, including I'm helping RVCC as a consultant deploy their new EV chargers. I'm helping Duke Farms buy carbon removals, and I'll talk a little more about carbon removals later on. I'm helping another company buy offsets and look into carbon capture and storage project methodologies, and so a variety of things. And also last year, I rejoined the Somerset County Energy Council, and a couple of my colleagues from there are on this call. I saw Jim Price and Dave DeVoren on there, and maybe there are others that I've missed, but so I'm involved, locally in the county energy efforts. So how did I get to that? So I started as a techie. I have a master's degree in computer science, and I was a VP at a .com in New York City, and now I'm doing something totally different. Why is that? Well, so I had kids. I don't know if anyone can relate to this. My kids that are now grown, we just went out and saw a show on Broadway. There's a picture. But, way back when they were little, I finally started thinking beyond myself and thinking about their future and their health. We got a Toyota Prius. I would buy them organic baby food because I was concerned about pesticides. And I also worked with Jim Price, who is an energy efficiency expert and has his own company. He helped me put my home through a home performance with Energy Star program, so helped make it more energy efficient, upgraded the equipment. I switched to LED light bulbs, and I'm still trying to figure out how do I switch from being a computer person to a sustainability and climate person. I found that there was this company called Green Irene that was training people to be eco consultants. So I did that for a couple of years part time. It was a great intro to sustainability. And that was, helping people be energy efficient, use less chemicals at home, and so on. And then I also was in the Rutgers Environmental Stewards Program, which is a continuing ed program that met one day a week, I believe, for several months. And then you have an internship at the end of that. And my internship was something I pitched to Raritan Valley Community College to help them with their river friendly certification. And at the end of that, they said, hey, do you want to stay on and be our sustainability coordinator? So that brings us back to my previous slide. So that's how I got there. So really just gradual realization that the environment matters, it impacts my family, it'll impact the future. There are things that I can do, and seeking out ways to learn more about it. Okay, so another thing that I did, and I got out an Excel spreadsheet at the beginning of this process to figure out what my emissions were. This was before there were good tools online to do it. And I didn't get the exact spreadsheet from 20 years ago out again, but my big takeaway from that was that if you split the emissions, um, looking at your home emissions and energy emissions, your cars and flights, my emissions for my family was a third of each. And I was really surprised personally that it wasn't mostly my home energy, that flights in particular are a big piece of that. And I don't feel like we travel a ton, but just a couple flights a year maybe. So back in 2007, our family's emissions was 35 tons, which we had two adults, two kids. It's about, I think, in the country, an average of 17 tons per, or it was 17 tons per person at the time. And I think it might be down to 15 tons now. I don't remember. But since then I've been using the TerraPass calculator tool, and my latest number was 17 tons for me and my husband. And I'm going to talk about how we got that down. And within that 17 tons, the proportion that is for home is much smaller. It's maybe half of what it was before. But my husband's still driving a pickup truck and flying for fun when I don't want to fly. And so there are things we can work on. But I will cover how we made this change. So one big thing that made a change for us is I got a Tesla. Now, I feel differently about my Tesla today than I did back then, but I was very excited at the time. My husband reminds me that we ordered it sight unseen, hadn't even gone for a test drive, and I've loved it and was planning to keep it forever, and I'm rethinking that. But we got it so early that we got free Tesla charging for life, or fast charging at the Tesla chargers for life. So it's kind of hard to give that up. Not that I fast charge that often, but that's the great perk of that car. Um, it has 85 kilowatt hours in it, and at 3 miles per kilowatt hour, that gives it a range of about 255 miles originally. And as it's aged, it's now down to about 230-mile range, so not terrible. It's lost about 10% in 12, 13 years. Had some issues with it. The motor, it has just one motor in the back, and it died one day, and it was fortunately still under warranty, so I got a new motor out of that. Door handles had an issue. The suspension needed fixing last year. But overall, love that car. And I'm trying to get my husband to adopt an EV as well. For car charging at home, we just had a single outlet put in. It's basically powered the same level as an electric dryer would be powered. We don't have any fancy mechanism. I've just got a cable that connects from that plug into my car. My car has the capacity to schedule its charging, so you can charge overnight, off-peak hours, and not when there's a lot of demand on the grid, if you want to, be environmentally friendly that way. You can see here this is a screenshot from my app. You can do lots of things. You can control, whether you can lock the car, you can turn on the climate system remotely, and you can see how it's charging. You can have it start charging if it's plugged in. You can see that it's charging at a rate of 24 miles per hour. So a different kind of speed than you would think of on the road. But so 24 miles in an hour, you're easily going to be able to charge even from scratch overnight. Another thing that we did was that we got an 8 kilowatt solar array installed on our home. It's on the back of our house, and we have trees in our backyard, but they were far enough away that we could put solar up there. And you can't even, I wish it was more visible. I've had other people tell me the same about their arrays on their roofs. I wish it were more visible so more people could see that we have solar, because basically you can't tell. The only, nobody's going out in the trees in my backyard to look at my roof. But we had the roof redone, and at that point, we just had the solar put on, and we decided to purchase rather than lease. And then this is just showing, this is the only evidence on the outside of the house. We have an inverter and a shutoff next to our electric meter. Here's the plan for our array. We had 25 Hanwha Q cell panels put up, and this is actually oriented north, so I thought we couldn't get solar for the longest time because I thought we needed a south-facing roof that we didn't have. So this is actually going east-southeast, and it still does pretty well in terms of generating the electricity at that orientation. I specifically asked Posigen, the company we worked with, to get, give me more expensive panels that were more efficient, because you want to get more electricity per panel if you can. It's worth, if you're not able to get enough, if you're space constrained, right, you get more power with higher efficient panels. And I also asked them specifically not to give me panels that were made in China because of the emissions profile of China. And at the time, Hanwha was building a plant in the US. So mine were not, I think, not from the US, but they were from South Korea. So I accepted that and was happy to know that they were going to be building a plant in the United States. So you get an app with the panels as well, and it shows you pretty pictures, makes you feel good about all the solar power you're generating, and it make it equivalent number of trees that you've planted. This was the end of the day on March 9th. We had generated 27 kilowatt hours of power that day. And so that's pretty good. Over the winter, it's not great. It's great, and it's always nice in the spring to see that number creeping up on a sunny day. So it says here, over the lifetime, we've generated about 38 megawatt hours. We've had the system for about 5 years, and it generates about 7 megawatt hours a year. This is also from the app, so there's the profile from March 9th. You can see, you get a little cloud cover, and the energy production goes down, even if it's, high noon. You can see how the production has varied from year to year, again, showing kind of they're expecting 7 megawatt hours per year is where those black arrows are. So sometimes it does better, sometimes it does worse. I'm glad that I'm not seeing like just a downward trend consistently that would indicate that there's, dirt on there that we have to go up and clean off, but it seems to be doing okay. And then you can see how it varies over the course of the year. It's showing a different color for each year here. And so you can see that the production in May actually is generally the highest for us. And that may be due to our orientation. It looks like typically the highest would be in July. So in addition to that, we a couple of years ago got a heat pump. Again, went back to see Jim Price, and he helped us out. So you can see on that picture on the left, that's our outdoor unit for the heat pump. This is on the north side of the house. And then on the far right of the house, you can see that was where the solar inverter and shutoff are. So this is our hidden side of the house. We didn't care if it got, extra equipment on it. And, that outdoor unit is raised up to keep it out of the snow in the wintertime. And then we have a picture of the indoor unit here. So we have a ducted system, forced air. So that's our Mitsubishi electric hyperheat. They call it H2I. I'm not sure what the I is for. Okay, so this is a cold climate system, and I was thrilled that we were able to get one of these. I think we got one of the first years that they came out. I was not worried at all that it would be able to perform. The main issue with it is that the biggest unit was only 4 tons, and our home is more a 5-ton size. So it was a little bit undersized. You have a choice of having natural gas or electric resistance as your backup heat. And I was so confident in the cold climate aspect of this that I'm like, okay, even though it's undersized, let's go with the electric resistance backup. We tend to keep the house at about 69 degrees all the time, so that we're not trying to ramp up heavily in the morning, trying to prevent that electric resistance heat from kicking in. And here are all of the performance characteristics from their website. They do say that it's really sized up to 2,000 square feet, and I think our house is really more like 2,500 square feet. So it's definitely undersized. But we had gone through that Energy Star home insulation improvements process, and we were hoping that would make all the difference. Okay, so the impact on our utility bills. Here on the left is our gas charges. We still have a gas dryer, a gas range, with the burners, and we have a tankless water heater. And those are all natural gas. And so for using those, we use about 1/3 of a therm per day. That's what that graph at the bottom is showing you as your daily usage of gas. And it costs us $21 a month, 10 of which is just a monthly service charge. So we were used to having $100, $200 bills for when our heat was on gas, and that's gone away. So that's been great. And I would love to get off of the other appliances that are on gas, but given that it's using so little, I haven't been pushing my husband too hard for that yet. But that's, on the to-do list. Now on the right here is something I just found on the PSE&G website for our account today. It doesn't show up in our bills, but they've started plotting our electricity usage, and we have net metering. So in New Jersey, you're allowed to, when your electricity is coming from your solar panels, you can use it for your home, but if there's something that if there's energy it's producing that your home doesn't need at that time, you can put it on the grid, and they meter that and keep track of it over time so that you can kind of use it as a savings account of electricity that you've generated. And then at times when you have to take electricity from the grid, they'll debit that account basically. And then when that runs out, you're just paying for electricity like you normally would. But that concept is something they're trying to illustrate in this image on the right. And the green section there, so there's gray, black, and green bars. So the gray bars are what we're taking off of the grid. The green or the black bars are what we're putting onto the grid. And then in those months where you're putting more onto the grid than you're using from it, you have this net amount that goes into your account, right? So does that make sense? So for purposes of this past year, it's showing that in June, July, August, and September, that gray bar is shorter than the black bar, which means that we generated more than we used off of the grid, and that green amount went into our account. And then the rest of the year, we drew that down to zero, and then and I'll show you how that works out on a month-to-month basis. All right, so just looking at the numbers and not the graph, they keep track. So every April, they zero out our account and it starts over. And I put in the red boxes. So we have a summer house that we go to May to October. So the years that we're actually in our house in Bridgewater are boxed in red here. But so as you can see, if we just go from top to bottom, we didn't have anything, where we're using more than we generated in April, right? They billed us for 352 kilowatt hours in April, and we had nothing in our account of savings at that point because they had just zeroed it out, or it was probably zero already, right? You really want to run that account down to zero so that you get the full benefit of it each year. Otherwise, they only give you wholesale prices for what's left over. And then you can see that in May, we were almost even. They only billed us for 70 kilowatt hours. And then June through October, we generated more than we used. We weren't in the house, but we banked that excess. So we got up to over a megawatt hour in September there, banked for us to draw down later. In October, they gave us a new smart meter, so there's a zero line in there. But then in October, again, they didn't charge us anything, but we used a little bit of our savings that we had in September. So that, that account went down a little bit. In October, and then in November, it went down further. And then by December, that account was zero. Now this is happening faster. The drawdown is happening faster now that we have our heat pump. When we were still on gas heat, we pretty much covered our electricity use the whole year. So that's one drawback of adding the heat pump after having the solar installed, is that the solar was sized for our usage before we had the electric heat pump, right? The PSE&G doesn't want you having extra solar capacity that you wouldn't be using. They really want you to use what you generate. And we're using more than that now. Okay, so our electric bill in February was pretty high. I mean, you could see the numbers on the previous page in terms of using over a megawatt hour of electricity in a single month. And that adds up to $447 for the month of February. It was cold in February. But I'm thinking that having the unit be undersized for our house didn't help, and that the electric resistance backup heat kicks in more than I would have expected it to. So it's not awful. This is only, if we go back and look at this, we've only got high bills really in January and February, and they were very cold months. But at the same time, nobody wants to see a bill that high. Granted, the bill for much of the year is zero. So it's more of a matter of being able to pay a bill that high in a given month in the winter. So being prepared for that. Now that said, we have a lake house up in Sussex County in Northwest New Jersey. We again went back to Jim Price and had him do the installation and the HVAC for that house, and we used the exact same heat pump up there. And everything's electric. We have an induction range, we have an electric dryer, we have an electric hot water heater. I can charge my car up there as well. So this is the bill for our house up there for February. So roughly the same. I don't know that the dates are exactly the same, but it was cold this past winter, and our bill was $261 up there. Now, we weren't living there. We had the thermostat set at 55 degrees. So even in an ideal circumstance, it's still going to be a couple $100 a month for your electric bill just for the heat. And that house is 2,000 square feet, so exactly the right size for that unit. And we had foam spray insulation all through the attic and in the crawl space underneath. So here's our bills for our lake house, and I have a separate account for our garage. And you can see that in the months that we're there, and this is a little confusing because it goes chronological, is going upwards instead of downward. We're paying roughly $200 a month when we're living there for the house, and then roughly $100 a month for charging my car. There's a little discrepancy there where it looks like they had an estimated bill in August that got addressed in September, but it works out to be about $100 a month to charge my car. And I was driving, an hour back and forth to work at least once a week during that time. All right. So we still have that residual emissions, and what to do about that. For a while I was using that that calculator and for TerraPass and buying carbon offsets through TerraPass, buying forest carbon offsets. In the past couple years, I've been buying carbon removals. So how is that different? So when you buy forest carbon, it's often mostly avoidance offsets, meaning that you're paying them not to log something that they would normally have logged, or you're paying them to have a different forest management plan that helps protect the forest. And then some of that can be in the form of carbon removals from new growth in the forest. So when you buy forest carbon, you can buy avoidance by having them not log, or you can buy removals, which is from new growth. I just want the removals. So I want to get that CO2 out of the air, right, and store it in a durable way. So last year I bought through the Patch system. They have an online platform that's really easy to use that lets you pick and choose, however many tons you want to buy, even if it's a small number, from a variety of different projects, and they have all sorts of information about the projects. So last year, for the first time, I bought biochar carbon removals. I bought 15 tons because last year our carbon footprint was only 15. This year it was 17 because we went to Hawaii for vacation. And I am planning to buy more biochar removals through a group that I'm involved with called the Open Air Collective, and they are supporting a biochar project in Africa where there are farmers living in a refugee camp I believe it's in Uganda, and they are taking biomass from a local farm and creating biochar out of it, which basically takes the CO, so the CO2 is taken from the air and it's in the plants, and then they pyrolyze the biomass to make it store carbon and not degrade, not decompose like it normally would. And so it holds on to the carbon for 1,000 years or more. It depends on the the temperature used and the method used, but it can be stored for 1,000 years or more. So I'm supporting that project. The Open Air Collective is a volunteer-based organization that is focused on carbon removal, and I worked with them. They do policy, and I'll talk about one of their other programs later, but I was involved with them in advocating for a low carbon concrete bill in New Jersey that passed with broad support back in 2023, and now we're patiently waiting for it to be implemented. But a really great organization that I've learned a lot from. And then, so also last year, while I was still or I guess it was the year before last, at RVCC, Raritan Valley Community College, where I was the sustainability coordinator, I worked with the environmental sustainability committee and their environmental club on a project where we got RVCC and their foundation to fund purchasing removals to cover a percentage of RVCC's emissions. So, so 2 years ago, I worked with them to, again, on the patch platform, buy 21 tons covering 1% of the college's scope 1 emissions. And I worked with the environmental club to, they got to pick which projects they wanted to buy removals from. So they bought removals from a reforestation project in Montana where there had been a forest fire and there was replanting happening. They wanted to buy what is it called? Regenerative agriculture removals for sustainable grazing in the Midwest, in the sort of the mountain states. So that's creating more soil carbon, and there are long-term contracts around preserving that. And then also a low carbon concrete company that has a formula where their concrete is absorbing more CO2 than a typical concrete, when it's after it's been set into bricks. So, and then this year we're going to do the same thing. Actually, on Tuesday, I'm going to go to their one of their professors is teaching a climate and energy class, and the new sustainability coordinator and I are going to work with them again with funding through RVCC and their foundation to buy 43 tons, which was 2% of their scope 1 emissions from burning fossil fuels on campus. So the idea is to slowly increase that amount, which is following something called the Oxford Principles of trying to, as these things become more affordable over time, buying more of it and getting that into your budget to try and get some of that CO2 out of the atmosphere. And so then I was telling Steve that I was at a conference earlier this week, and I was presenting about this Open Air Collective program called the Carbon Removal Challenge. And that is a global competition in which university student teams, though we did have one high school student on one of our teams this year. Um, so university teams compete to develop the most innovative, scalable, and practical carbon removal solutions. Um, and so we've had twice the participation this year as we've had in past years. We had teams sign up from 20 different countries. We have teams from Greece and Turkey, the UK, Switzerland, Azerbaijan, India, China, Australia, Canada, the UK, and of course the US. And some really top-notch schools. We got University of Michigan and Johns Hopkins and Cal Poly. And we have 29 judges and 15 mentors, and we're going to be doing, well, we did our fifth webinar earlier today. We had a panel of venture capitalists talking to the students about, startups and what venture capital is all about and what they look for. So it's a really exciting program. But we've had a tough time this year finding sponsors. I think the political environment is making everybody very cautious in spending, especially on climate initiatives. And so we launched a crowdfunding campaign for the first time. So, and I'm terrible at asking for money, but this is a cause that is really close and near and dear to my heart. If you go to the website there, the openaircollective.com/CRC, or if you use your QR code there, you'll see a great 8-minute video that shows you what these students have done. I mean, the capstone of the whole program is to bring the 5 finalist teams to New York City to present at Carbon Unbound, which is one of the leading conferences for carbon removal. And they did that last year. So if you go to the website, you'll see the video that's the highlights of their experience there. And they loved it, and it was great and so energizing for everybody at the conference to see these young people so excited about doing something about the climate and presenting their ideas. And one of the students said in the video, towards the end of the video, that it was the best part of her university experience, and she was going to tell her family that. So that's my plug for my passion project. So that's all I've got for you guys. We have time for questions, and I am on LinkedIn all the time. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, I would love to accept your invite. And if you have questions or want to follow up with me about anything, please send me an email. And that's Carbon Manager. So my company is called Carbon Manager LLC. So it's Carbon Manager .cc for climate change. So
great. Thank you so much, Sue. This is Pat. I have a couple of questions in the chat right now, but anyone else who has questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and we'll ask Sue or whoever else can answer some of these questions. The first one is from Anjul, and this is probably for anybody that has an answer. Anjul said they would like to get references for ground source heat pump installers in Bergen County. So if anyone has someone they want to recommend, then please go ahead and put that in the chat. The next one is from Ken, and he says, Sue, how do you know when electric resistance heat was on? Is there any indicator in your system?
Yeah,
haven't
I
seen
wish
it.
I did because, we kind of just had to guess, and that was part of why we decided to keep um, the thermostat at the same temperature all the time because we didn't want it to drop overnight and then have to do a lot of reheating at once. Um, I don't know how to tell that, and I know Jim Price is there. He's saying no. Um,
Jim, you're on mute.
There's no way of telling. I've gone back to Mitsubishi and wanted to be able to control that because if, as Sue said, if you have to come back and recover, if it goes beyond, I think it's 6 or 12 minutes, depending, then it kicks the heat on. So if you do a setback at night, then it realizes that you can't recover in 12 minutes and says, "Oh, we need more," and it turns the resistance heat on.
yeah.
So when I
But when
went back,
Sorry, Jim, I just wanted to point out that first winter, the electric resistant heat unit wasn't available. So we
right.
operated without it, and we didn't see the jump in the electric bill because there was no resistant heat, and the system was able to keep up just fine. So my husband kept saying, "Why don't we just turn that thing off?"
Yeah, I've
Um,
I've come to that conclusion because I went back to Mitsubishi and I said, how do we disable this for like most of the months? Because we really only need it for 2 weeks in February. And the rest of the time it's just fine. Because I had other customers during COVID that we couldn't get the resistance heat for either, and they were happy as pie. They didn't have any problems at
yeah,
all, except for
yeah,
2 weeks when you know, but there's just go throw the breaker and turn it off is the only
yeah,
way that I could figure out how to do that right now. And until they change their controls, there is another thing you could do on the thermostat is make it a 4-degree difference instead of a 2-degree difference so that it would wait longer to kick in. It would have to be a 4-degree difference for 12 minutes before they would. And I
yeah,
only just learned that not so long ago because I had another customer say, Jim, I always get $100 bill. And this year we got a $300 bill. What's going on? And, when I did the homework, and this was only about a month ago, um, you
You
know,
can, you can change the setting on the thermostat so that
I
it
just found that
allows
out.
variance.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
Right.
if
well,
I
I
that's
could,
can make, I could put a 4-degree deadband instead of a 2-degree deadband before it kicks the strip on. And then on the breaker itself, just leave it off till February when it gets 5 degrees.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
I have the same system, so that's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay, good.
I have
Well,
the Mitsubishi
so we
Hyperheat
got an
pump
answer.
with the electrical heater, and I asked the same question. And no, it's interesting to know that people don't use it are happy. It's still, even with the electrical heater, it still takes. We set the temperature back. I cannot sleep at 69 degrees. I need under 60 degrees
Wow.
in order to sleep. So sometimes in the morning it's got like eight degrees, to make up, and it takes a while. It takes like 2 hours to get up there. I don't think the electric, heater is on a lot of that time. And I was told there were also. So first of all, the offset can be up to 5 degrees. I have it set at 2. And the reason I have it set at 2 is because in the summer, the air conditioner won't go below 67. And like I said, I need much colder air, much colder temperature. So I have it set at a 2-degree offset, so it's really getting down to 65.
Did you have
Uh,
your house sealed and insulated?
no, we should. We just didn't do that.
That will
We
definitely solve your problem, especially in the summer.
Well, I was also told that there were several settings for the algorithm to use the electric heater, and it could be like 3 or 4 different time intervals. So it wasn't fixed at 12 minutes or whatever like that. There were a number of them.
That would help your electric bill too,
Yeah,
too,
Yeah.
I was happy. I was happy, and
Okay,
All right. Well,
back,
so I'll
back to,
we'll switch off our electric resistant heat next winter.
Just turn the breaker off on the
Yep.
unit
Yep.
and it
yeah,
won't come
no,
on
maybe we'll
until
try that too.
All
February.
right. We'll
right
do
now.
that. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, Sue, Marty says, Sue, this is great. You're certainly walking the talk. How do you, or do you have offhand, I guess, a comparison of the different carbon removal options, cost-wise?
Oh, cost-wise. Okay. Well, so um, biochar is one of the least expensive ones for if you're not going to, well, okay, let me back up. There's things that are biological tend to be less expensive, and things that are all based on engineering tend to be more expensive. So a direct air capture is typically your most expensive because they are building machines that are sucking air and processing it and trying to filter out the CO2. And that takes a lot of electricity. But in solutions where there's a biological component, you're relying on nature to do that work of capturing the CO2. And then the issues come down more into transportation of the material, and if you're pyrolyzing, the cost for getting that amount of heat. But biochar is one of the cheapest. And as I mentioned, you can also get removals from forests, and those are much less expensive. So those can be like $40 if you get just the removals. But most of what we're looking at, when we're trying to buy with the college, for example, we're trying to get a little bit over $100 a ton on average. So we'll buy like the forest and the regenerative ag as on the cheaper end of that, and then balance that out with a few higher, more expensive ones that are, could be 200 or more dollars. The biochar that I'm planning to buy this year, I think, is running at about $240 a ton. So that's a lot. You do the math, and I'm expecting to spend like $4,000 on carbon removals because, I want to pay that, penalty for putting CO2 into the atmosphere. But I'm also trying to support these programs, and hopefully over time, as things are able to scale and become more efficient, those prices are going to come down. That's the hope. And direct air capture, I mean, their target is to get down to $100 a ton. A couple of the direct air capture companies say that they can do it, but I think most of them are going to be $300 or more a ton. Yeah.
Is there a marketplace for this, or how do you have to go to each separate website to find out how much they charge and where they're located and all?
Well, so that's why I was using the Patch website.
Okay,
Yeah, that is really meant for consumers like us who are not going to buy a whole lot, and not going to be buying enough to warrant a separate contract from a removals provider. So Patch is one place that where you can buy just a few tons. You can buy from a bunch of different kinds, and they have a great search function so that you can say, hey, I'm interested in this solution in particular, or I'm willing to look at anything that's a removal, or I want something that's been through the isometric methodology and credit market, that kind of thing. You can search for what you want. You can say what year you want the removals to happen. Is it this year or last year, or is it in the future? So they make it really easy to do that. What I've done so I also bought recs and offsets for the college, and I would go to a company and I'd say, okay, I need proposals for hundreds of tons, or recs of hundreds of megawatt hours, and that's a totally different situation where you're getting an individual broker at a company to give you a custom quote. there are other companies that have things available online. There's a company, well, there's a coalition called Frontier Climate. If you go to frontierclimate.com, they have a great reputation. They've got their partners are big name, primarily tech companies that have decided they're going to put a lot of money towards carbon removal purchasing. And so the Frontier people have made it possible for you to buy from the companies that they've vetted and bought from themselves. So you can go to their website and buy carbon removals that they've bought. But those tend to be more expensive because they're trying to scale up new, primarily engineered technologies. What else? There are other registries. I'm trying to think who else you can buy from in smaller numbers. Those are the two that jump out at me: Frontier and Patch.
Patch, I think you said, is it patch.com or
Patch.io.
IO? Okay,
Patch.io.
thank you.
And there are a couple of links that we put in the chat if you're interested. The fundraiser for carbon removal challenge and
Oh, thank
the
you.
open air collective are both in the chat if you're interested in that. Ennis asks, would a passive house lower your electric bills from what they are now? I think
Passive
the
house?
answer is yes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a passive house is just meant to be temperature stable all the time, right? And with very little HVAC. Sure. I mean, we tried up at our lake house. It's super insulated. Um, and I'm not quite sure what more we could have done there. Maybe the windows could have been better insulated than what we had there. But I haven't looked at the details of passive house for a long time.
Yeah, the challenge with the lake house is it's on the east side and the wind comes from the west right across the lake, and there's no defense. We when Ed and I were there in January, it was really cold. It was punishing, actually.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry that it was punishing, but
no, that's all right.
for
We
that
got it
insight.
done. But that's the handicap you have on that side of the lake, is that you get all the wind that comes directly off that
Yeah,
side.
that's true. But we
There's no
had
defense.
our architect did not want that spray foam insulation in there. He thought we needed to let everything breathe and that moisture would collect. And it's not been a problem at all. We are so glad that we did that insulation.
I
But
knew what I was talking about with that,
yeah,
because you're totally sealed, which is great,
it is great. So,
especially on the lake.
yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, what were you going to say about I know he didn't want to do it. He's old school.
He didn't want to do it. He was old school. We had a 93-year-old architect, so who did a great job, but yeah, none of this newfangled insulation for him.
Oh, yeah. And Ed's amazing, because I don't know how he even read those plans. I was like, Ed, how do you read? He's like, Jim, it's a lot of work. So,
Anyway, so
Okay. This
next.
may not be for Sue. It may be for anyone who knows the answer. But do you know best practices for opening and closing your windows in comfortable weather with mini splits?
Ooh. Um,
less humidity, more open windows. More humidity, close them and turn them on.
okay.
That's a good
Jim.
rule. Okay.
Ken,
Oh, I see. I thought this was the same question, but it's a different question from Anshu. Would like to get references for ground source heat pump installers in Bergen County. And Mike Winka has has responded. I don't know the answer to that, but the trade organization for geothermal is HTTPS, and the link is in here, geoexchange.org, and they may have a list of installers in New Jersey.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't know about geothermal. We looked at it for the college briefly, but we didn't get to the point of installers.
Yeah, we're thinking about having a geothermal network talk in the next couple of months. Someone from Princeton, and we're wondering if people would be interested in hearing that sort of thing. I think it would be interesting, but
Yeah, we had a call with Ted Borer from Princeton, who
that's
was,
the one. Yes.
yeah, when they were working on their big geothermal project over the past couple years, and he was great. Yeah, I would recommend that you bring him in as a speaker.
Okay, John says, my installer put a simple toggle switch on the thermostat lead that triggers the emergency heat, so it is disabled till you flip the switch.
Okay, yeah, that's
That might
similar
work.
to what we have. We just have to turn it off.
Jim wants to know, how do I calculate my flight CO2 consumption?
Yeah, oh,
Don't they
that's
tell you
super.
that?
So I used the TerraPass tool, and when they ask you about, what cars do you have, what model, what year, and they calculate, specifically the emissions of your car. And same with the flights. They ask you, where'd you fly from? Where'd you fly to? And they have a database, I guess, of which types of airplanes fly different length routes, and they make some assumptions about that and calculate your CO2 from that. I mean, and it's, they're calculating what are the emissions of the flight, and then how many passengers were on that flight. So as a passenger on that plane, what is your share of the emissions for that flight? Yeah, so I don't calculate it myself, but TerraPass does, so that's why I keep using their tool.
When I've done that, I've just kind of looked up the carbon
Per mile.
credits online at random, and looked at 2 or 3 different ones, and they all calculate it. If that's what you're wanting to do, you just put in the input like you said.
Yeah, I believe even in Google now, if you search for a flight, there's an option where it tells you what the emissions of that flight are. And so I've searched for lower emissions flights that way.
Yeah, I would think that's a very common thing to want to do. Oh, that's
All
white
right.
noise. Okay, so Ken wants to know, Sue, are you a solar? Wait, what happened?
Solar consultant. No, it just jumped.
Oh,
No, I'm not a solar consultant. I leave that to the solar companies. I'm not involved in doing any consulting around solar project implementation at this point. I might actually get into there's a solar company where I happen to know one of their senior executives, and he talked to me about using low carbon concrete in their installations. That's the closest I got. But no, I'm not, I did study solar for my master's, but I'm not doing consulting around solar.
Mike Winka and I presented a talk on solar, how to select it, all the principles and all that maybe November timeframe. I can put that in as a link in the chat if you'd like me to do that.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was only a couple of months ago.
One of the comments is about Stockton's geothermal system. And I did talk to Stockton about it briefly when we were considering it for RBCC. And I believe that theirs actually is connected, or maybe they have two systems, but at least one of them is connected to an aquifer or a reservoir where they're doing the temperature moderation off of this body of water. And it's an older system, and I had heard, I'm forgetting all of the details, but I had heard that there were some issues with it. And we talked to Princeton and not Stockton, because Princeton's was a newer system that was, I guess they didn't have much experience in terms of how well it was running, but Stockton was almost like a counterexample for why not to do geothermal.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I think this was in answer to an earlier question. Jim Price said, just so everyone knows, the heat pump is only slightly undersized for 2% of the runtime. Maximum
Jim.
capacity. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I think you have a question about your electrification coach.
Oh, now,
I have.
Steve, you can go look up the electrification
Oh, I
coach.
have that ready to go right now. So at the
Okay.
conclusion of it, I'll put it up.
Well,
While I have everybody's ear, I
I
put
think
in
this
the
is the
chat.
end. And you just put in the solar video, which
Yes.
is the last comment right now. So put in the electrification coach.
Okay. What I'd like to do is just sort of, if we're done with the questions, I can just sort of launch into a little spiel.
Yeah, I think we're done. Thank you so much. This was great.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Steve's also going to talk about next month, right?
Yeah. So Sue, we really enjoyed your presentation.
Oh, before that, wait a second. Nadine has a question. Or your hand is up, Nadine. Oh, no. Okay. Sorry. Misplaced hand. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Okay. I'm putting up on the screen, if I can, share screen. There you go. So this is an example
Wait,
of
you
how to
only
reach
have
us.
half of it up there.
Oh, I do?
Oh, well, I guess.
Does that work?
Better.
There, that does.
Okay. Is that blocking you when I do this? It looks like it's okay. Okay. So if you're at all interested in reducing your greenhouse gas emissions and you're uncertain about next steps, we have just a thing for you. We have trained electrification coaches available free of charge. And we encourage you, if you're uncertain about what to do next, sign up with us. And this shows how to do it. Either take your cell phone and scan, or go to the link shown here. And what I'll do is I'll put that link in chat. So again, it's free of charge. And what we'll do is assign you a coach. And turns out Jim is one of our coaches. Yes, thumbs up for Jim. And I did not know that he was the electrician for, or the HVAC contractor and also weatherization, I guess, for Sue's house. I did not know at all. So this is a great opportunity, Jim, for you to advertise. Your green truck has absolutely no logo.
Jim,
You're
you're
muted.
on mute.
We have to get it wrapped, but it's not a finalized deal yet. I want to put a polar bear on there, and we haven't decided the actual name of the next level of the company when we rebrand yet. So we bought a bunch of domains, but we haven't decided which it's going to be yet. So,
So now it's no name.
well, it's still Comfortable Homes. We haven't rebranded yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's just that, we had the truck painted green already. So
Tell us what locations in New Jersey you cover.
Middlesex County, Somerset County, a little bit of the southern part of Morris County, and Hunterdon County.
Okay, and people can look up your name. They can Google your name. What was that
Yes.
again?
Comfortable Homes.
Okay, just remember that. Comfortable Homes. And Jim Price will do your bidding. So another
Oh, wait a minute.
he'll sell you whatever you need.
No, I'll tell you what's appropriate. That's
Okay.
just not my thing to sell them whatever.
Okay, I put into chat a link to this link you see at the bottom, the tinyurl.com. So you can click on it in chat and go to that link. And that'll take you to the Electrification Coach sign up page. So you can get yourself covered for the things you don't know what to do and would like to electrify your house. Sue covered many topics. And people like Jim Price know a lot more than that. So, and we have a whole big group of electrification coaches available for you. Is that all we wanted to cover tonight? It's now about 8:15. It's about our standard closing time.
I think
We
so.
really appreciate everybody showing up. We had a good turnout,